In a small, quiet town surrounded by dusty roads and endless fields, there lived a man named Ethan Cole. He wasn't rich or famous, but everyone in the area knew him as the go-to person when something broke down. Ethan ran a tiny garage tucked at the edge of the main road, where he spent most of his days fixing cars, tractors, and anything else with wheels, or even things without them. His hands were always covered in grease, and his overalls had more patches than original fabric, but none of that mattered to him. What mattered was doing honest work and helping people. Ethan's life wasn't easy. The town itself was struggling, with many families barely getting by. People often came to him with broken-down vehicles they couldn't afford to replace, and instead of turning them away, Ethan would find creative ways to fix their problems for next to nothing. Sometimes, he'd accept payment in eggs from a neighbor's chicken coop or fresh vegetables from someone's garden. Other times, people promised to pay him later, though later rarely came, but Ethan didn't complain. He believed that if he kept doing good, somehow things would eventually fall into place. His garage wasn't much to look at either. The roof leaked during heavy rains, and the paint on the walls was peeling so badly it looked like it might crumble off entirely. Inside, tools hung precariously on hooks, and spare parts were piled high in every corner. It wasn't fancy, but it was home to Ethan. He liked the smell of oil and metal, the sound of engines humming back to life, and the satisfaction of solving problems others thought were impossible to fix. One particularly hot summer afternoon, Ethan was lying on a creeper beneath an old tractor, trying to figure out why its engine kept sputtering. Sweat dripped down his face, and he wiped it away with the back of his hand, leaving streaks of dirt across his forehead. Just as he tightened the last bolt, he heard the crunch of tires pulling into his driveway. This wasn't unusual. Folks stopped by all the time. But what caught his attention was the sleek silver car gliding smoothly into view. Cars like that didn't belong in this part of town. Curious, Ethan slid out from under the tractor and stood up, brushing himself off as best he could. Out of the car stepped a woman he didn't recognize. She looked different from anyone else around here. Her clothes were casual yet stylish, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her sunglasses reflected the bright sunlight. For a moment, Ethan wondered if she'd taken a wrong turn. But then she approached him with a warm smile and introduced herself as Clara Bennett. Clara explained that she needed help with a broken water pump at her property nearby. Without hesitation, Ethan nodded. Helping people was what he did best, after all. Little did he know, this simple act of kindness would lead to something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. As they loaded his tools into his beat-up truck, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange sense of curiosity about this mysterious stranger and the adventure waiting just beyond the horizon. As Ethan and Clara climbed into his old, battered truck, the engine sputtered to life with a groan that seemed to echo the vehicle's age. The seats were worn, springs poking through the fabric in places, and the dashboard was held together with duct tape. Clara didn't say a word about it, though Ethan noticed her glance around curiously as they pulled out of the driveway. He felt a twinge of embarrassment, but quickly shrugged it off. His truck might not have been pretty, but it got the job done, and that was all that mattered to him. The drive to Clara's property wasn't long, but it gave Ethan plenty of time to wonder about this stranger sitting beside him. She had introduced herself politely enough, yet there was something about her that felt different. For one thing, she spoke with a calm authority that suggested she was used to being in charge. Her hands rested neatly on her lap, and her posture was perfect, as if she'd spent years practicing how to carry herself with grace. But despite her polished demeanor, she didn't come across as arrogant or distant. Instead, she seemed approachable, even friendly. "So, how far is your place?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. "Just a few miles down this road," Clara replied, pointing ahead. "You'll see it soon." Ethan nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly as he navigated the bumpy dirt path. "How long has the pump been giving you trouble?" he asked, trying to make conversation. "A couple of days," Clara said. "It's caused quite a bit of inconvenience, especially since I rely on it for water. I called a few repair services, but they were either too busy or wanted an outrageous fee just to show up. Then someone mentioned your name." Ethan chuckled softly. "Well, I'm not exactly fancy, but I get the job done." "That's what I heard," Clara said with a small smile. "People around here speak highly of you." Her words caught him off guard. It wasn't often that Ethan received compliments, let alone from someone who looked like they belonged in a completely different world. He glanced at her briefly before focusing back on the road. "I just try to help where I can," he said humbly. "Folks around here are good people. They deserve honest work." Clara nodded thoughtfully, her gaze drifting toward the window. Outside, the landscape began to change. The dusty roads gave way to rolling hills dotted with lush greenery. Ethan's eyes widened as they turned onto a private lane flanked by tall trees. At the end of the drive stood a beautiful farmhouse surrounded by acres of land stretching as far as the eye could see. Rows upon rows of grapevines lined the fields, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight. It was breathtaking. "This is yours?" Ethan asked, unable to hide his astonishment. "Yes," Clara replied simply, stepping out of the truck. "Come on, I'll show you where the pump is." As they walked toward the broken pump, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Clara than she was letting on. She moved with purpose, explaining the issue with the pump in clear, concise terms. Yet, she avoided talking about herself, deflecting any questions with polite smiles or vague answers. Ethan didn't press her. After all, his job was to fix things, not pry into people's lives. Still, as he knelt beside the pump and began inspecting it, he found himself wondering, who was this woman? Why did she seem so familiar with hard work yet so out of place in this rugged town? And why had she chosen him, a struggling mechanic with nothing to offer but grease-stained hands, to solve her problem? For now, those questions would have to wait. Ethan pushed them aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The pump was old, its parts rusted and worn, but he could already picture how to fix it. Rolling up his sleeves, he got to work, determined to prove that Clara had made the right choice in trusting him. Little did he know, this simple repair job would lead to discoveries far beyond anything he could have imagined. The broken pump sat near a cluster of vines, its metal casing dulled by years of exposure to the elements. Ethan crouched beside it, his experienced hands running over the rusted surface as he assessed the damage. Clara stood nearby, watching him with quiet interest. The midday sun blazed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the ground and making beads of sweat trickle down Ethan's face. He wiped them away absent-mindedly, his focus entirely on the task at hand. "This thing's seen better days," Ethan muttered, more to himself than to Clara. "Looks like some parts are completely worn out. I'll need to replace them if we want this working again." Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think you can fix it today?" she asked, shading her eyes from the glare of the sun. "I'm going to try," Ethan replied confidently. "But it won't be easy. This model's older than I am, and finding spare parts isn't always straightforward." Clara smiled faintly. "I trust you'll figure it out." Her words surprised him. Most people would have panicked or hounded him with questions about timelines and costs. But Clara seemed content to let him work without interference. She didn't hover or micromanage. Instead, she stepped back, giving him space while occasionally offering him bottled water to keep him hydrated. Each time she handed him a cold drink, Ethan felt a flicker of gratitude. It was a small gesture, but one that made the sweltering heat just a little easier to bear. As the hours passed, Ethan worked steadily, his movements precise and efficient. He dismantled the pump piece by piece, laying each part carefully on a tarp he'd spread on the ground. Some components were beyond repair, their surfaces corroded beyond recognition. Others could be salvaged with a bit of elbow grease and ingenuity. Ethan rummaged through his toolbox, pulling out wrenches, pliers, and other tools he'd collected over the years. Every so often, he paused to wipe his brow or take a sip of water, but mostly he stayed focused on the task before him. Clara watched silently, her curiosity growing as she observed his methodical approach. She noticed how Ethan handled each tool with care, treating them almost like extensions of his own hands. His concentration was absolute, his brow furrowed in deep thought, as he pieced together the puzzle of the broken pump. There was something admirable about the way he worked, not rushed or careless, but deliberate and steady. It was clear that he took pride in what he did, no matter how small or insignificant the job might seem to others. By late afternoon, Ethan had managed to reassemble most of the pump. With a final turn of the wrench, he tightened the last bolt and stood up, stretching his stiff muscles. "Let's see if this works," he said, turning to Clara. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the pump as Ethan flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the machine sprang to life, drawing water effortlessly from the underground source. A satisfied grin spread across Ethan's face as he watched the flow stabilize. "Looks like we're good to go," he announced. Clara exhaled softly, relief evident in her features. "Thank you, Ethan. You saved me a lot of trouble." "It's what I do," Ethan replied modestly, packing up his tools. As he worked, he glanced around at the sprawling vineyards once more. The sheer scale of Clara's property still amazed him. How could someone so young, and seemingly unassuming, own all this? And why did she choose such an isolated place for her home? These questions lingered in his mind, unanswered for now. With the pump repaired and the day's work complete, Ethan expected Clara to offer payment or at least say goodbye. Instead, she surprised him yet again. "You've done great work today," she said warmly. "Would you like to stay for lunch?" "My treat." Ethan hesitated, unsure whether accepting would be appropriate. But there was something genuine in Clara's invitation, a kindness that reminded him of simpler times. After a moment's pause, he nodded. "Sure, that sounds nice." As they walked back toward the farmhouse, Ethan couldn't help but feel that this encounter was far from ordinary. Something about Clara, and her vast, mysterious vineyard, felt like the beginning of a story. The farmhouse was even more impressive up close. Its white-painted walls gleamed in the sunlight, and a wide porch wrapped around the front, adorned with flower boxes bursting with vibrant blooms. A gentle breeze carried the scent of lavender and freshly cut grass as Ethan followed Clara inside. The interior was just as striking. Spacious rooms filled with natural light wooden beams lining the ceilings, and tasteful decor that blended rustic charm with modern elegance. Ethan felt out of place in his grease-stained overalls, but Clara didn't seem to notice or care. She led him to a shaded patio at the back of the house, where a table was already set with sandwiches, fresh fruit, and chilled lemonade. "I hope you're hungry," Clara said with a smile, gesturing for him to sit. Ethan hesitated briefly before taking a seat. "This looks amazing," he admitted, eyeing the spread. "You didn't have to go through all this trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Clara replied, pouring them each a glass of lemonade. "Like I said earlier, you've earned it." As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally. Ethan talked about his garage, sharing stories of quirky customers and challenging repairs. Clara listened intently, laughing at his anecdotes and asking thoughtful questions. In turn, she spoke about her love for nature and sustainable farming practices, though she remained vague about the specifics of her operation. Ethan found himself relaxing, enjoying the easy rapport between them despite the obvious differences in their lives. It wasn't until dessert, a slice of homemade apple pie, that Clara finally revealed more about herself. "You know," she began casually, cutting into her pie, "when I first heard about you, I wasn't sure what to expect." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, what did you hear?" "That you're one of the most trustworthy people in town," Clara said simply. "That if anyone could fix my pump, and do it right, it would be you." Ethan chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. Clara leaned forward slightly, her tone shifting to something more serious. But I'll admit, there was another reason I wanted to meet you. Now Ethan was curious. And what's that? She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. My family owns these vineyards. Over 3,000 acres, actually. We supply grapes to wineries all over the country. But managing an operation this size comes with its challenges. Equipment breaks down constantly, and finding reliable people to maintain everything. Well, let's just say it's not easy. Ethan nodded slowly, beginning to understand where this was headed. So, you're looking for someone to help keep things running smoothly. Exactly, Clara confirmed. Someone who knows machinery inside and out, who can think on their feet, and who won't cut corners. Someone like you. For a moment, Ethan didn't respond. He stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Managing maintenance for 3,000 acres of vineyards sounded like a monumental task, one far beyond anything he'd ever done before. Yet there was something thrilling about the idea. It wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity to grow, to step outside his comfort zone, and prove himself in ways he'd never imagined. I don't know what to say, Ethan admitted finally. This is a lot to take in. You don't have to decide right now, Clara assured him. Take some time to think about it. All I'm asking is that you consider it. You've already proven today that you're capable of handling whatever comes your way. Ethan sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. Here was a chance to leave behind the struggles of his failing garage, to provide a better life for his family, and to work in a place that felt almost magical. But it also meant leaving behind the familiarity of his old life. The town, the people, the routine he'd built over the years. As they finished their meal, Clara gave him a reassuring smile. Whatever you decide, Ethan, I want you to know how much I appreciate what you've done today. You've given me more than just a working pump. You've given me peace of mind. Ethan returned her smile, feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty bubbling within him. This simple repair job had turned into something far greater than he could have anticipated. And as he drove home later that evening, the image of Clara's vineyards lingered in his mind, along with the tantalizing possibility of a future he hadn't dared to dream of. Until now. That evening, as Ethan drove back to his modest home, his mind raced with thoughts of Clara's offer. The idea of leaving behind his struggling garage felt daunting, but the vision of those sprawling vineyards stayed with him like a promise he couldn't ignore. He parked his truck in the driveway and stepped inside, where Sarah, his wife, greeted him with a warm smile. "How did it go?" she asked, noticing the distant look on his face. Ethan hesitated for a moment before answering. "It went well. I fixed the pump. But something else happened, Sarah. Something big." Sitting down at their worn kitchen table, Ethan recounted every detail of the day, from the moment Clara pulled into his driveway to her unexpected proposition. Sarah listened intently, her eyes widening as he described the scale of Clara's vineyards and the opportunity before him. When he finished, there was silence for a beat, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator. "What do you think?" Ethan asked finally, searching her expression for guidance. Sarah leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers lightly against the tabletop. "Ethan," she said slowly, "this could be exactly what we've been waiting for. A chance to turn things around. For us, for the kids. You've worked so hard for so long, barely scraping by. Maybe this is your chance to step into something bigger. But what about the garage? What about our life here?" Ethan countered, voicing the doubts swirling in his mind. "This town. It's all we've ever known." Sarah reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Just because we leave the garage doesn't mean we leave everything behind. Our roots are strong, Ethan. No matter where we go, they'll always be part of us. And besides," she added with a small smile, "you'd still be doing what you love, fixing things, solving problems. Only now, you'd have resources and opportunities you never had before." Her words struck a chord deep within him. She was right. He loved his work, And this new role wouldn't change that. If anything, it might reignite the passion he sometimes felt slipping away under the weight of financial struggles. Still, the decision wasn't easy. That night, as they tucked their children into bed, Ethan wrestled with conflicting emotions. Could he really walk away from the life he'd built? Or was this the beginning of something extraordinary? The next morning, after much deliberation, Ethan called Clara. Her voice brightened when she heard his answer. "I'm glad you're willing to give it a try," she said warmly. "Come by tomorrow, and I'll show you around properly." True to her word, Clara spent the following days introducing Ethan to the ins and outs of her operation. She showed him the irrigation systems, storage facilities, and even the high-tech equipment used for bottling wine. At first, Ethan felt overwhelmed by the sheer size and complexity of it all. But Clara was patient, explaining everything clearly and encouraging him to ask questions whenever he needed clarification. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Ethan adapted quickly. His years of tinkering with old tractors and fixing broken-down cars gave him a unique perspective on problem-solving. Where others saw obstacles, Ethan saw possibilities. Within weeks, he had streamlined several processes, saving time and money while improving efficiency. Workers who had initially doubted whether a small-town mechanic could handle such a massive responsibility soon came to respect and admire him. Word of Ethan's success spread through the community, and people began visiting the vineyard just to see how he was doing. Clara noticed the bond between Ethan and the locals and encouraged him to continue fostering those connections. Together, they brainstormed ways to give back to the town, hosting harvest festivals, donating excess produce to local food banks, and sponsoring scholarships for young farmers eager to learn the trade. As months passed, Ethan realized that accepting Clara's offer hadn't just changed his career. It had transformed his entire outlook on life. For the first time in years, he woke up each morning excited about the day ahead, not because of the paycheck or the prestige, but because he knew he was making a difference. And though his journey had begun with a simple act of kindness, it had grown into something far greater, a partnership rooted in trust, gratitude, and shared dreams. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan and Clara's working relationship blossomed into a genuine friendship. They spent countless hours together, walking through the vineyards, discussing improvements, and brainstorming ideas to make the operation even more efficient. What started as professional collaboration evolved into something deeper, a mutual respect that transcended their differences in background and lifestyle. Ethan admired Clara's dedication to her vineyards. She wasn't just a business owner. She was a steward of the land, deeply connected to every acre under her care. Whether it was inspecting grapevines at sunrise or personally overseeing deliveries late at night, Clara worked tirelessly to ensure everything ran smoothly. Her passion inspired Ethan, reminding him why he had fallen in love with fixing things in the first place, the satisfaction of seeing something broken come back to life. For her part, Clara came to rely on Ethan not just for his technical expertise, but also for his steady presence. He had an uncanny ability to simplify complex problems, breaking them down into manageable steps. More importantly, he brought a sense of calm to situations that would have overwhelmed others. When equipment failed during peak harvest season, or when weather threatened to ruin crops, Ethan remained cool-headed, finding solutions that kept operations running without missing a beat. Their partnership extended beyond work, too. Clara often invited Ethan and his family to dinner at the farmhouse, where Sarah and the kids quickly grew fond of her warm hospitality. The children loved playing among the rows of grapevines, chasing butterflies, and pretending they were explorers in a vast green jungle. Sarah, meanwhile, bonded with Clara over shared recipes and stories about raising kids in such different worlds. It didn't take long for Ethan's family to feel like part of Clara's extended family. One summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ethan and Clara sat on the porch sipping glasses of wine made from grapes grown right there on the property. "You know," Clara said softly, swirling her glass, "this place wouldn't be what it is today without you." Ethan chuckled, brushing off the compliment. I'm just doing my job. No, Clara insisted, turning to look at him. You've done so much more than that. You've brought new energy here, new ideas, new hope. People see how hard you work, and it inspires them. You've reminded everyone, including me, that success isn't just about profits. It's about community, resilience, and making a difference. Her words struck a chord deep within him. For years, Ethan had doubted his worth, believing he was destined to remain in the shadows, quietly fixing things while others took center stage. But here was Clara, telling him that his contributions mattered, that they had value far beyond what he'd ever imagined. The bond between them strengthened further when they began collaborating on projects aimed at giving back to the town. Together, they organized free repair workshops, teaching locals basic skills to maintain their own equipment. They sponsored school programs focused on agriculture and sustainability, encouraging young people to pursue careers in farming. And during tough times, like when a neighboring farm suffered a devastating fire, Clara and Ethan led relief efforts, rallying the community to support those in need. Through these acts of kindness, Ethan realized that his role at the vineyard wasn't just about maintaining machines or managing logistics. It was about building connections, fostering goodwill, and leaving a lasting impact on the people around him. Every repaired pump, every improved system, every smile exchanged with a grateful neighbor reinforced the idea that his work mattered, not because of its scale, but because of the lives it touched. By the time autumn rolled around, the vineyards were thriving, and so was the relationship between Ethan and Clara. Their partnership had become a testament to the power of trust, gratitude, and shared purpose. Though neither of them could have predicted it when they first met, they had created something truly special, a legacy built not on wealth or ambition, but on the simple belief that helping others was the greatest reward of all. Life at the vineyard wasn't without its challenges, and Ethan quickly learned that success came with its own set of trials. One year, a severe drought swept through the region, threatening to devastate the grapevines that Clara and her team had worked so hard to cultivate. The irrigation systems Ethan had improved were pushed to their limits, struggling to provide enough water for the thirsty crops. Days turned into weeks, and the stress began to show on everyone's faces, including Ethan's. Clara called an emergency meeting one evening, gathering her staff under the dim glow of lanterns in the barn. "We can't give up," she said firmly, though there was a flicker of worry in her eyes. "If we work together, we'll find a way through this." Ethan nodded, his mind already racing with ideas. He suggested installing solar-powered pumps to conserve energy and reduce reliance on dwindling water supplies. It was a bold move, expensive and time-consuming, but Clara trusted him completely. "Do whatever it takes," she told him. With her support, Ethan threw himself into the project, working late into the nights alongside his team. They scavenged parts, repurposed old equipment, and even built some components from scratch. Slowly but surely, the new system came together, breathing life back into the parched fields. The drought tested their resolve, but it also brought them closer as a team. Workers who had once kept to themselves now shared meals and stories, finding strength in each other's company. Ethan noticed how Clara made a point to visit every corner of the vineyard, checking in on her employees and offering words of encouragement. Her leadership reminded him that sometimes the simplest gestures, like asking someone how they're holding up, could make all the difference. Just as things started to stabilize, another crisis struck. A fire broke out in one of the storage barns, destroying valuable tools and equipment. Flames lit up the night sky, casting long shadows across the property. Ethan rushed to the scene, helping firefighters contain the blaze while Clara directed efforts to salvage what they could. By morning, the barn was reduced to ashes, leaving behind a grim reminder of how fragile success could be. But adversity only seemed to strengthen their determination. "We'll rebuild," Clara declared the next day, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. Ethan stood beside her, nodding in agreement. Together, They rallied the community, organizing fundraisers and pooling resources to replace what had been lost. Neighbors who had benefited from their earlier acts of kindness stepped forward to help, donating materials and labor. What could have been a devastating blow instead became a testament to the power of unity and resilience. Through these trials, Ethan's role expanded beyond fixing machines. He became a problem solver, a motivator, and a source of stability for those around him. His calm demeanor during emergencies earned him the nickname the Anchor among the workers, a title he wore humbly. Even Clara leaned on him more than ever, seeking his advice not just for technical issues, but for personal ones as well. By the end of the year, the vineyards were thriving once again, thanks in large part to Ethan's ingenuity and Clara's unwavering leadership. As they stood together overlooking the lush fields, Ethan felt a deep sense of pride, not just in what they'd accomplished, but in the bonds they'd forged along the way. Every challenge had taught them something new about themselves and each other, proving that true strength lay not in avoiding difficulties, but in facing them head-on, together. As the sun set over the horizon, casting golden light across the rows of grapevines, Ethan realized that their journey was far from over. There would be more obstacles ahead, no doubt, but he knew they could handle anything as long as they had each other, and the unshakable belief that perseverance always paid off in the end. Years passed, and the vineyards flourished under Ethan and Clara's care. What had once been a sprawling but struggling operation transformed into a thriving hub of innovation and sustainability. The field stretched farther than ever before, dotted with solar panels that powered irrigation systems and state-of-the-art machinery designed to minimize waste. Tourists began visiting from nearby towns and cities, drawn by the beauty of the landscape and the promise of tasting some of the finest wines in the region. Yet, despite its growth, the vineyard remained rooted in the values Ethan and Clara held dear: hard work, gratitude, and giving back to the community. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan stood atop a hill overlooking the vineyards, his hands tucked into the pockets of his worn jacket. The air carried the faint scent of ripe grapes, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly turned soil. Below him, workers bustled about, harvesting the last of the season's crop. Children laughed as they chased each other between the rows of vines, their laughter echoing across the fields. It was a scene of abundance and joy, one that filled Ethan with an overwhelming sense of pride. Clara approached quietly, carrying 2 glasses of deep red wine. "To you," she said, handing him one with a warm smile. "For everything you've done." Ethan chuckled softly, raising his glass to meet hers. "To us," he corrected gently. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." They clinked glasses and sipped the rich, velvety liquid, savoring the fruits of their labor, literally and figuratively. The wine was exceptional, a testament to the care and dedication poured into every step of the process. But more than the wine itself, it was the journey that meant the most to both of them. From the day Ethan fixed Clara's broken pump to the countless challenges they'd overcome together, their partnership had grown into something extraordinary. As they stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Clara spoke thoughtfully. "You know, when I first met you, I wasn't sure what to expect. You were just a mechanic working out of a tiny garage in town. But now—" She paused, her gaze sweeping over the fields. "Look at what we've built together. Look at the lives we've touched." Ethan nodded, his heart swelling with emotion. He thought about the families who had benefited from their initiatives, the scholarships for young farmers, the free repair workshops, the donations to local charities. He thought about the workers whose livelihoods depended on the vineyard, and how many of them had become like family to him. And he thought about Sarah and the kids, whose unwavering support had kept him grounded through every twist and turn. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Ethan admitted quietly. "When I fixed that pump, I didn't think it would lead to anything more than a paycheck. But now—" He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. "Now, I can't imagine doing anything else." Clara smiled, her eyes glistening in the fading light. "That's the thing about kindness, Ethan. You never know where it will take you." or how far it will go. Their conversation drifted into comfortable silence as night fell, blanketing the vineyards in a soft glow from the moon above. For Ethan, it was a moment of reflection, a chance to appreciate how far he'd come and to dream about what lay ahead. The road hadn't always been easy, but every challenge had been worth it because it had led him here, to a place where he belonged, surrounded by people who mattered. In the years that followed, Ethan and Clara continued to push boundaries, experimenting with new techniques and expanding their reach. Their story became a legend in the small town, inspiring others to believe in the power of perseverance and collaboration. And though Ethan still wore grease-stained overalls and drove his battered old truck, he carried himself with quiet confidence, knowing that success wasn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the impact you left on the world and the lives you touched along the way. As the seasons changed and the vineyards grew even more vibrant, Ethan often found himself standing on that same hill, glass of wine in hand, marveling at the beauty around him. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could bloom into something truly unforgettable. And for Ethan Cole, that was a legacy worth celebrating.